Hypen people to share their hearts with y'all. They have prayed, hopefully. They have fasted somewhat. They are spiritual, just a little bit. And they're going to bring what God has told them, or they read somewhere on Wikipedia. Was your Bible open to anywhere in the preparation of this talk at all? And open your hearts and your once. Open your hearts and your minds to be changed by them in a good way, hopefully. Drum roll, please. Without further ado, all the way from over there. Josiah Gilbert, everybody.
Come on, bro.
I want to do that. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, some of us is trying to contain ourselves.
Okay, so tonight I'm going to be talking about God's power in our lives. So, in our walks with God at times, we minimize God's power and what He can do for us because when unexpected things happen to us and when we don't understand it and why does it happen to us, we get frustrated and wonder why it happens. But God puts different situations in our life to strengthen us and show us His power. And then in Genesis, when we look at Joseph's situation, where he was sold as a slave, and then when he was wrongly accused by Potiphar's wife, and then when he was sent to prison, Joseph he could have gave up on his dreams there, but he chose to remember his dreams and he kept his faith. And not long after Joseph was in the prison, not long after Joseph was in prison, God fulfilled Joseph's dreams to him, and then Joseph became second in command in Egypt. And then so Joseph could have looked at his situation and given up on his dreams, since at the same time things went from. Joseph could have looked at his situation, given up on his dreams, since at the time things went from bad to worse. But then, but he kept his faith, and then he knew what God could do for him. Then after some time, God did it. And then Genesis 45 verse 8 NKJV says, Joseph said, "So now it was not you who sent me here, but God, and He has made me a father to Pharaoh, a lord of all his houses, and a ruler throughout the land of Egypt." And then Genesis 50 verse 20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." So God showed His power to Joseph. So God showed His power to Joseph by putting him in a situation that God showed His power to Joseph by putting him in a situation that he had to dream of. And then we can look at for another example of God showing His power. We can look at God. When he took Moses and the Israelites out of Egypt, and when they came to the Red Sea, when Pharaoh was chasing them, it looked like the Israelites wasn't going to get out of their situation. But then when it looked like they wasn't going to get out of their situation, the Israelites started to doubt God and ask, "Why didn't they just stay in Egypt?" But then that's when God told Moses to take his rod and stretch his rod over the Red Sea, and when Moses did it, the waters departed, and that's when the Israelites went across. So God showed His power to the Israelites by parting the Red Sea for them when it seemed impossible. And so we know that when God puts us in tough situations in our lives, He's only doing it because He's setting us up for something great, and He's doing it to show us. He's doing it to show us His power.
Yeah, and he had to, nothing like teaching for about 2 seconds and then someone just busts out laughing at you. even say his name. Okay. Drum roll, please. All I heard was all the way from over there.
Jefferson
Chelsea
County.
Gilbert.
So, in our walk with God, it's a given or a must that we must. It's not a. Well, I don't want to say must, but you know, we got to go through tests, trials, storms, tribulation, hardships, and because at that point and at that time, that's when our faith will be tested by God. It will be tested to prove if our walk with God lines up with our trust and our belief in God. And I just found out that having a walk with God and trusting and believing, two different things. So they don't coincide. I mean, they do kind of coincide, but they don't. You can't put like salt and rice, breakfast rice, but you know it's still good with rice, dinner rice, if y'all get that. But outside of us, you know, since we gotta go through these stuff to prove our faith, some people might say, well, we have a lover and a caring God. Why would he allow us to go through such hardships, financial trouble, pain, suffering? And it all comes together as a plan. The Bible teaches us that God loves those who are his children and that he works all things together for good, as recorded in Romans 8:28. So that means that the trials in our lives and tribulation, it allows. Let me start. Hold on. So that means that the trials and tribulation that he allows in our lives are part of working together for all things that are good. That also means that all tests and trials have a divine purpose for what God ultimately wants out of us. God's ultimate purpose for us is to grow and be more. It's to grow more and more into the image of his Son. But it's all part of the process and sanctification, being set apart for God's purposes and to be fitted to live for his glory. In 1 Peter 1:6-7, in the CEB version, it says, "You now rejoice in this hope, even if it's necessary for you to be distressed for a short time by various trials. This is necessary so that your faith may be found genuine. Your faith is more valuable than gold, which will be destroyed even though it is itself tested by fire. Your genuine faith will result in praise, glory, and honor from you when Jesus Christ is revealed." And God loves us so much that he will send us through a trial and a test. He will never allow us to go through that alone. He will forever and always be with us through every step of the trial, test, storm, no matter what it may be. Jesus' presence in our life doesn't guarantee that a storm won't come. It is just guaranteed that you'll make it through the storm. In closing, everybody knows that Jesus and Lazarus, you know, they was close because it says that God visited his house often, numerous times. But I find it kind of weird how they were so close they developed a friendship, but Lazarus ended up dying, which was, I guess we can say, Jesus' best friend. And he did that all to prove a point, not directly to Lazarus, but to the Jews and to the people who I think, you know, they knew who Jesus was and they probably saw him do, or they probably heard him do some miracles and stuff, but they wanted to see for themselves. So, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like because God knew that Lazarus was sick. He knew 2 days ahead, and then he waited another 2 days to come to Lazarus, but at that time, 4 days had passed, and he was dead in the grave. But my point is that no matter how close you are with God, you can still go through trouble. Anything can happen. You can be a perfect Christian. You can be a perfect Christian. You can be a perfect Christian, or you can be someone who comes out loud and say, I hate God, you know. but you still gonna go through something just because. And it was the love of God that got Lazarus out of his trial. And it was the love of God that got Lazarus in his trial. And it was the love of God that got Lazarus out of his trial. And the love of God will not take you through a trial that it does not intend to bring you out of.
No, he was right. It's like Jesus intentionally waited for him to die. And it makes you wonder sometimes in our lives what God intentionally lets die. You know, you realize that everything he did was to show his identity. And if Jesus would not have resurrected Lazarus, his people, even though, you realize when he died, Jesus died and he was resurrected, his disciples still didn't believe it until they saw him. Can you imagine how much harder of a time that they had grasping the idea that Jesus was resurrected if they had not already seen him resurrect somebody? So Jesus had to resurrect somebody else's dead thing to show that whenever something in their life was being resurrected, he could do it. So why would they believe it? And so that's what God does in our lives. God will allow something to die in your life so that when he resurrects it, you'll believe that he resurrected it in your life. God will allow something to shrivel up in his life so that whenever you get worried, it proves to you that he can do it. I'm working on an idea, a thought, that the worst parts of your life, the fire, the burns, are the things that help people believe in God. You know, some people won't understand God from a Bible study. Some of your friends will try to give them your best speech about Jesus, and it won't move them at all. Nebuchadnezzar told Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to bow. And if they didn't bow, he'd throw them in the fiery furnace. They told him before he threw them in the furnace, they said, our God's going to deliver us. It made him so mad that he upped the heat. He throws them in there. He doesn't believe that their God's going to deliver him. He's angered by the even mention of their God. You have friends like that? Like you try to witness, they get angry and kind of upset with you. You have family members, you try to talk about God, they get uncomfortable. And you just wish, if I had the right words, if I was spiritual enough, I could win them. It just doesn't seem to get across to them. In the midst of the fire, Nebuchadnezzar saw, out of his very mouth, he said, it looks as if the Son of God is in there with them. The Son of God is a new term right then. Son of God refers to what Jesus was titled when he came, when the flesh of God came on earth. So 1,000 years before, there's a heathen king that doesn't believe in God, all of a sudden seeing Jesus in the midst of someone else's fire. Sometimes the only way your friends and your family member will ever see Jesus is in the midst of your trial. So how you overcome peer pressure, your cousin that's the same age as you will say, I saw Jesus only through him getting them through that. I didn't see it in their words. I didn't see it in the scriptures. I didn't see it in their hair. I saw how they handled conflict, insecurity, addiction, doubt, and that showed me where Jesus was. Sometimes it takes the fire and the scars to outline Jesus in their lives. Drum roll, please. Without further ado, all the way from there, Devan Gibson and his leather-bound Bible.
His leather-bound Bible.
With what Bible?
His leather-bound Bible.
Oh, leather-bound Bible.
It's new.
Yes. Anyway, so in 2 Kings, in 2 Kings, Elisha, the prophet Elisha, is speaking to the king of Judah, and those that are traveling with him, and he said, "Thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches, and for thus saith the Lord, ye shall not see wind, neither shall you see rain, yet that the valley shall be filled with water, that ye may drink, both ye and your cattle and your beast." God said he was going to give them water, but he left it up to them as to how much they got. He said that he was going to give them water, but they got to determine how deep to dig the holes. They got to determine how many holes they wanted to dig. They got to determine how much water they got. And they knew that. They knew that the more they dug, the more they worked, the more they got. The bigger the blessing was going to be. In the very next chapter, there's a widow woman crying to Elisha saying, my sons are about to be sold into slavery and to pay off my husband's debts. And Elisha said, what do you have in your house? In other words, what do you have that the Lord can even use to bless you with? And she said, nothing save a pot of oil. And he said, good. Go into all your neighbors' houses and borrow all of their empty vessels. And when you borrow all the empty vessels, bring them into your house and begin to pour that pot of oil into each of the vessels. And when you have filled each vessel, take them to the marketplace. And when you take them to the marketplace, sell them, use that money to pay off your debts. And not only pay off your debts, but you and your sons are going to have an inheritance for the rest of your lives, something to live off for the rest of your lives. And it came to pass when the vessels were full that she said unto her son, Bring me yet another vessel. And her son said, there is not a vessel more, and the oil stayed. He said, there's not a vessel more, and the oil stayed. When her son said that there were no more vessels, the oil stopped flowing. When he said that there was nothing left for God to fill, nothing left for God to use, God heard him, and he stopped the flow of oil. When they stopped emptying vessels, God stopped the flow of oil. I know the boy literally meant that there were no more vessels, but that just goes to show you that your abundance is determined by how much room you allow God to fill. How much room you've prepared for God to fill in with the blessing. See, the oil stops flowing when you stop emptying vessels. The water can only be as deep as the trough that was dug for it, and your blessings can only be as big as you have prepared for. Amen. That good with y'all? I told you it's gonna be short tonight, Mary.
Y'all good? Is that good with you?
No, wait. I got this one sticky note. Okay. I got this one sticky note. Okay.
Was it good with him?
Look. Okay. Now the whole little thing, I didn't give examples because I don't know what you're praying for. I don't know what God has promised you in your prayer closets. But you know what you need to do to prepare for your promise. You know what you need to do to prepare for your blessings. Amen. Now I'm done, Mary. Amen.
I can't handle like Samuel's preaching noises. He went, It's just of all people. Look at him, you guys. I'm telling you, that's gospel right there. That's good stuff. So I'm gonna tell you something real quick. So I told Cam tell this, and y'all probably don't remember this, but I remember stuff I preach more than other people do. Maybe Kyle maybe remembers a little bit more than I do. There was a statement stuck with me: unique sacrifice equals unique experience. You remember the story where I told you that Moses lifted up his hands? As long as his hands were lifted, they won the battle. As soon as he lowered it, they began to lose. Well, he left his hands up long enough, and men helped him hold his hands up, and they won the battle. And I was looking around all in that story, and you know you can't find any verse where God says, "Thus shalt lift hands to win your battle." He didn't tell Moses by audible invitation, if you do this, you will get the victory. I was like, why? Why would Moses believe that would work if no one's ever done this before Moses and no one ever did it after Moses? And I realized it's because all of us know the one thing we can give to God now that would change our whole lives without us even asking God what that thing is. We all know instinctively, what is that one thing without God even giving me a verse, without God even shouting it from heaven? I know if I give this one thing, I will move myself closer to heaven. We all know it. We wrestle with that every day because we doubt whether or not it's going to be pleasing to God. And sometimes you'll get a moment of clarity where you'll go, I'm going to go ahead and give this to God. So this, Cam Tellis said that I'll get some flack for this from other people. This will not be your conviction. So I'm not preaching gospel. This is just mine. This unique sacrifice, unique experience. So if you want God to move specifically in your life, you must have specific devotion. See, we want God to be specific to you and move specifically in your dreams and your problems, but yet we want to give God a generalized devotion. You can't pray the same way with the same, you have to find your fingerprint on your walk with God so God can move deeply in your life. So you can't judge what you do for God based on what your neighbor does for God, because they have different dreams, different weaknesses, different callings. So God had dealt me for a long time, and it was just like this nagging. We talked about burdens a couple weeks ago, like this nagging, like this heavy thing on me. I couldn't figure out what it was. And so I started praying early in the morning. I started praying late at night. I just couldn't figure it out. I had no peace about it. And these words that come back in my mind: unique sacrifice, unique experience. And we talked about, the wilderness. I've been dealing with that, like enjoying the process, enjoying praying with God more than anything God will give me. You remember the altar series? It's about the root, not the fruit. The root of relationship is better than anything the fruit will ever give me. It's about praying and talking with Him. So I was like, God, what are you trying to tell me? Why do I have no peace? Why do I feel like I never can do enough? I was like, it can't be because I'm not praying enough. I'm praying more than I've ever prayed. And I've learned enough that prayer is not tracked by time. Prayer is tracked by depth and honesty. You pray 15 minutes and you have the most depth and honesty out of all of us. You're going to touch heaven more than the person that prays 3 hours. And so that leaves a lot of condemnation, just a side note. Well, for me, I realized I listen to a lot of audio, a lot of podcasts, a lot of sermons, watching a lot of YouTube videos. And I get anxious and I have a hard time being present with those around me. I get agitated, I get worked up, I get very judgmental, comparing myself to other preachers. And all this stuff is going on, and more reasons. And I literally heard God telling me, why don't you just empty your whole life and do nothing but talk to me. And I was like, ooh, that sounds like really crazy. So I started siphoning it back. I started out with like, I'm not going to play video games. So I cut video games out. Now it will not be your conviction, so don't get worried. Merit saying give up video games. Unique. And so I cut it out, and I was like, okay, that feels good. But I still felt like I was forcing prayer. So I cut out YouTube videos. Okay, I'm just listening to audiobooks and podcasts. That's more cleaner living, right? You know, I'm giving more time to God. But I still didn't feel quite there. And I was like, I'm praying more. It must not be about the amount. It must be about something specific to me. I got to the point where I cut everything out before I preached like 3 weeks ago. And the way God moved in that service, it was God showing me, listen, you heard me right. Even though I didn't tell you specifically, you couldn't find it in the Bible, I uniquely was speaking to you. Well, I thought that I questioned God a week later. I threw back in podcasts, threw back in audio, threw back in this, got into YouTube videos. It's like, you know, maybe God just wants me to pray in the mornings. And today, something weird happened. I got home from work early, and I had a lot of time. And I already had my day stripped out, how I pray, how I read my Bible, when I listen to this, when I read this novel. And I got home, had 3 hours of free time. And I was going to do all my things, 30 minutes of this, 30 minutes of this and everything. And I felt complete unfulfillment. Like, I was going to treat myself, and I was going to do this and that. And I almost, like, broke down. I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why do I feel such self-agitation? What are you trying to tell me? And I was listening to an audiobook, and I couldn't get any peace. I was just nervous. And so I tried reading a novel, couldn't get any peace. And I was like, that's weird. Like, you think this would chill me out? I turned on the PS4, and I got so self-loathing about it, it almost made me cry. I turned it off, and I sat there, and I was like, what do you want from me? And God said, just talk to me. But I was like, but I can't talk well enough to you. If I empty out my whole day, like, how am I going to feel it? And God said, well, you're judging it wrong. You're judging it by how everybody else's prayer lives and their unique situations, and you're thinking that it's the amount of words you say that validates your walk with me. And you're thinking it's how much you cry, how much you speak in tongues. I'm going to wet my powder crud. I was going to teach this. He told me that prayer, we've always thought prayer was a conversation. And a conversation implies exchanging of words. That's what the value of the encounter is. I exchange words, you exchange words. That's what validates our encounter. But prayer is not a conversation. Prayer is a thing of communion. So communion is like this. You ever been around somebody and you just enjoy being around them? You don't remember what you talked about. You just like being with them. Family members, you can hang out for hours and you don't remember what thing you said. You talked a lot or you don't talk at all. You just like being around them. I realized, you know, your grandmother's never going to say, give me more words. She'll say, give me more time. Your boyfriend or girlfriend, future, will say, never going to say, give me more words. They're going to say, show me more attention, give me more time. I was like, we keep thinking God's saying, give me more words, hit a word count. But God is saying, give me more time. And I learned, maybe God's teaching me that I can sit there and be quiet, and I can soak it in, and that I don't have to always be talking for it to be prayer. I can listen, I can have peace, I can empty out my whole life. And so I'm going to do it to see how this goes. But one thing that frightened me was that it's just so empty. It's not impressive, it's not hard, it's not some spooky plan. If I empty out my whole life, all I have left is God. And that makes everything so much easier. So like in your life, ask God what His specific covenant is with you. It may not be anything like what I just told you. But you know you got a nagging feeling where you're like, what is the one thing that God wants me to do now? I feel that I'm not there yet. If you never feel like you've been released, like you never feel comfortable, and there's always this questioning about your walk with God, maybe because you're trying to do it in the wrong way. Maybe you're trying to pray like me, but you're supposed to pray like you. Maybe you're trying to pray like them, but you're supposed to pray like you. Maybe it's not more time or more impressiveness or more Bible scriptures. Maybe it's just different because God is trying to be specific and unique to you. Stand with me. That's why I talked about all that. Devan said that they gave God more space. They determined how many holes they would dig, how deep they would dig them. They ran out of vessels. What I was trying to get to the point was, it's all about space. And I had this crazy feeling when I was like, well, if all I do is pray, then I was like, that's going to be boring. And like, how I know how to pray? And I realized, if all I did was hang out with young people, and engaged with y'all, and wasn't distracted by what I was listening, what I was watching to. If all I did was I was fully engaged with y'all, media wasn't burning up my brain all day, burning my attention. If I was fully engaged with my wife, and if all I did besides hang out with y'all and my wife was pray read my Bible, it seemed incredibly boring, but it'd be the most fulfilling life I could ever have. And I realized I need so much less stuff in my life for my life to be so fulfilling. Actually, my life would be way more fulfilling than praying 2 hours at 4 a.m. in the morning, just by emptying my life. And so sometimes when it comes to having greater devotion to God, it's not about what you can add, though. It's about what you can take away. It's not about having more God, forcing more God. It's about having just more room, just being more chill, being more open, being more willing. In our society today, we're inundated with so much stuff. We're being force-fed. It's hard to realize that. Do you get more space? Okay. More space. What was the title of your lesson, Devan?
More space.
It was originally abundance. I don't know where it was going actually.
We're going to title it, Was That Good With Y'all? That's what we're going to title it. Is that good with y'all? Hey, stay tuned. We're going to watch that video. That's how it's saying blasphemous things. God, we thank you for your love and your grace. We thank you for your mercy and your peace. Open our hearts and our minds to be changed by you. God, your word is like a seed planted. Help us to tend it and allow it to grow. And help us to understand it and be sensitive to it, even though it was our peers, even though we laughed and ice cream was involved. God, help us to allow you to access our full range of emotions. You speak deeply in moments of laughter. You speak deeply in altar calls that are blowing up. You speak in small moments and big moments. You have a full emotional range. And so allow us to free you in our lives. And allow this moment to minister to us. In Jesus' name we pray. And the church says, Amen.